Lily blinked to the glow of the Christmas lights, gripping her letter as if it were a lifeline. The heating in the apartment barely worked, and her breath formed a faint mist in front of her lips. Still, she folded the paper with delicate care, smoothing the edges the way her mother once did before she got too sick to leave her bed. Her mother, Grace, lay in the bedroom behind the thin wall, coughing softly beneath a pile of mismatched blankets. Lily listened, her small shoulders tightening with each sound. Every winter felt heavier, colder, harder, and this year felt lonelier than ever. She tiptoed to the bedroom door. "Mom," she whispered into the dim room. Grace turned her head, tried to smile despite the exhaustion softening her features. "Hey, sweet girl, aren't you supposed to be asleep?" Lily held up her folded letter. "I just finished the special one." Grace's eyes softened. "Your Santa letter?" Lily nodded. "Uh-huh. Can I hear it?" Grace asked gently. The little girl hesitated. She wasn't afraid of her mother hearing it. She was afraid of what it meant. Afraid that saying it aloud would admit how badly she wanted something she knew her mother couldn't give. But she walked closer, her socked feet silent on the cold floor. She climbed onto the bed carefully, tucking herself beside her mother's warm arm. Grace brushed a strand of hair from Lily's forehead. "I'm listening." Lily unfolded the letter, the paper trembling slightly. She took a breath. "Dear Santa, I know you're very busy. I know lots of kids ask you for toys, and maybe I should too, but I only want one thing this year. Could you send me a dad? Not just any dad. Just someone who won't leave. Someone who'll love mommy too. Someone who'll stay." Grace's breath caught. Tears welled instantly in her eyes, and she had to turn her face away for a second. Lily looked down, suddenly unsure. "Is it bad?" Lily whispered. Grace quickly wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "No, baby. It's just beautiful. And a little sad. You should never be afraid to want love." Lily leaned into her mother's shoulder. "It's okay if he can't come. Maybe Santa is too busy. Maybe dads don't." "Hey," Grace said, cupping Lily's cheeks. "Don't talk like that." But Lily had heard enough adults talk in hushed voices. About her father who disappeared. About bills piling up. About what happens if Grace gets worse. Children hear everything, even the things meant to be hidden. Grace brushed her fingers down her daughter's cheek. "You deserve a whole world of love. And one day you'll have it. I know you will." Lily buried her face in her mother's chest. "I just don't want us to be alone anymore." Grace's heart ached, so deeply it felt like it cracked. She whispered into her daughter's hair, "You're never alone. You have me." But Lily's next question pierced straight through her. "For how long?" Grace froze. For a moment she didn't breathe. Her illness had grown worse this year, and she could feel her body slowing, weakening. She'd avoided doctors because the bills were already impossible. She didn't know how much time she had left. She didn't know how to answer. So she tightened her arms around her daughter instead. "Long enough," she whispered shakily. "Long enough for you to know you were loved every single day." Lily clung tighter. Later that night, when Grace fell asleep, Lily put on her thin jacket, wrapped a scarf twice around her neck, and slipped outside into the snowy hallway. She padded down the front steps with her letter in hand, heading for the only mailbox in the neighborhood that still collected outgoing mail. She stood on her tiptoes, opened the rusted flap, and dropped her letter inside. As soon as it disappeared, she whispered, "Please, please let him hear me." She didn't know the letter wouldn't land in the North Pole. She didn't know it would fall into the hands of a man whose world had been silent for far too long. Across town, in a skyscraper glass and steel, billionaire Michael Hale sat alone in his penthouse office, staring at a pile of unopened holiday letters sent to his company. Most contained requests for donations or partnerships. But one small envelope, written in a child's shaky handwriting, lay on top by accident. Michael reached for it without thinking. Michael stared at the letter, as if the ink itself carried heat. Each word felt like it pressed directly against the hollow space he'd been pretending didn't exist. The office around him, floor-to-ceiling windows, polished marble floors, award plaques, suddenly felt too big, too cold, too empty. He read Lily's final sentence again, slower this time, as if reading it too quickly would break something fragile. Could you send me a dad? Someone who won't leave. Michael exhaled shakily and leaned back in his leather chair. For years, people would call him the Ice King, a man whose heart froze the day he buried his fiancée after a tragic accident. He had never remarried, never let anyone close again. Holidays were just reminders of what he lost. But now a stranger's child was asking Santa for the one thing he himself had lost long ago. And the worst part? He understood the loneliness in her handwriting more than anyone else ever could. He set the letter gently on the desk, running his thumb over Lily's messy cursive. No return address, just the company's P.O. box. He frowned. How did this get mixed in? He murmured. The holiday mailroom was packed. Volunteers often sorted stacks without checking every envelope. But somehow, this one ended up here, on his desk, tonight. A coincidence or something else? Michael stood, grabbed his coat, and headed to the lower floor where the holiday letters were sorted. The night staff was gone. Only a single security guard nodded to him as he passed. In the sorting room, he rummaged through the outgoing bins until he found it. The stack of envelopes from Lily's neighborhood post office. He gently turned over each one, searching for similar handwriting. And then he found it. A second envelope. Same shaky letters. Same heart sticker. This one hadn't been opened. He held it for a moment, uncertain whether he had the right to read it. But then he remembered the cold tremble in her words, the way the letters leaned like she was trying not to cry. He opened it. Inside was a picture. Hand-drawn, crayon-colored. A little girl holding her mother's hand, standing outside a tiny apartment. Above them, in blue crayon, she'd drawn a snowflake with a note. This is where Santa can find me. Michael's throat tightened. He sat down slowly on one of the sorting tables, the picture trembling in his hand. He hadn't felt something like this, raw, unexpected, personal, in so long. It scared him, but it also awakened something he thought died with his past. He slid both letters into his coat and walked out to the parking garage. Snow painted the city streets in soft white strokes. As he sat behind the wheel of his car, he whispered into the dark cabin, "Who are you, little one?" On the other side of the city, Lily crawled into bed beside her mother, shivering from the cold night walk. Grace wrapped an arm around her, whispering, "You mailed it?" Hum. "And you feel better?" Grace asked softly. Lily nodded. "A little." Grace pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Good. Now sleep, my love." But even as she said the words, she had to turn her face away. A sharp sting shot through her chest. She clutched the blanket, trying to hide the way her breath staggered. She didn't want Lily to see. Not yet. Not until she figured something out. Across the city, Michael parked outside his building, but didn't get out of the car for several minutes. He kept staring at the crayon drawing. At the tiny snowflake Lily had drawn as Santa's map. Something pulled him toward that address. Something deeper than curiosity, deeper than guilt, deeper than loneliness. It felt like purpose. He finally stepped out, the city lights glowing against the fresh snow, and whispered into the cold air, "I'll find you. Somehow." And he meant it. He walked toward the elevator of his penthouse building, unaware that tonight, because of the child's trembling handwriting, his entire life was about to change. Back at the apartment, Lily whispered into the dark, "Mommy, do you think Santa reads every letter?" Grace stroked her hair gently. "I think sometimes the right letter reaches a person who needs to see it most." "But Santa's a person?" Lily asked, confused. Grace smiled faintly, her voice tired. "He might be, or maybe sometimes people become Santa for each other." Lily's eyes softened. She didn't fully understand, but something warm bloomed in her chest. Meanwhile, Michael laid the letter on his bedside table, unable to sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the sentence, "Someone who won't leave." He whispered into the darkness, "No one deserves to feel that." Something inside him, something dormant, unlocked, outside his window. The snow continued to fall, as if the sky itself was trying to cleanse something long overdue. Tomorrow, he decided, he would find that apartment building. He didn't know what he'd say, He didn't know what he was allowed to do, but he knew he couldn't walk away. Not from a child who asked Santa for the only thing he had once lost and never found again. And as the night deepened, morning arrived quietly in Willowbrook, the kind of winter sunrise that looked beautiful but felt brutally cold. A pale gold light pushed its way through frosted windows, settling on Lily's face as she woke up beside her mother. She blinked at the cold air, pulled the thin blanket higher, and looked over at Grace. Grace's skin looked paler than usual, her breathing shallower. For a moment, Lily's chest tightened with fear, but then Grace opened her eyes and smiled softly, brushing her fingers across Lily's cheek. "Morning, sweetheart." Lily exhaled in relief. "You scared me." Grace swallowed, forcing strength into her voice. "I'm right here." But inside, she felt that frightening heaviness again, the kind that warned her body was losing a battle she could no longer pretend wasn't happening. Meanwhile, across the city, Michael Hale, usually up before dawn, consumed by work, had not slept a minute. The letter sat on his bedside table next to his phone, as if watching him, as if waiting. He finally sat up, ran a hand through his hair, and whispered, "I can't ignore this." By 7 a.m. he was dressed, tying the same charcoal gray coat he wore to board meetings. But today wasn't about money or deals or shareholders. Today was about a child he'd never met, yet felt impossibly connected to. He placed both of Lily's letters into a folder, grabbed his keys, and headed out. His driver, Paul, looked surprised when he stepped into the back seat. "Morning, sir. Destination?" Michael hesitated. He had the drawing, the snowflake, and by matching the return address stamping ink with the location of a nearby post office, he estimated the neighborhood. He handed Paul the drawing. "Take me here." Paul blinked. "Sir, you want to go to this neighborhood?" Michael nodded. "Now." Paul didn't argue. He pulled the car out into the snow-covered streets. As they drove, Michael stared out the window, thinking about Lily's handwriting, about her wish, about the years he'd spent burying his emotions, convincing himself solitude was strength. Today, he wasn't sure that was true anymore. Back in the small apartment, Lily helped her mother to the kitchen. Grace leaned heavily against the counter, her breath shallow. Lily tried to hide her worry by acting cheerful. "Mommy, should we put out cookies for Santa again tonight? Maybe he'll see them from the sky." Grace smiled weakly. "Sweetheart, Christmas is still weeks away. But maybe he'll come early." Lily said hopefully. Grace opened her mouth to reply, but a sharp pain cut through her chest. She grabbed the counter, her knees buckling. "Mommy?" Lily cried, rushing forward. Grace steadied herself. "I'm okay. I just stood too fast." But Lily saw the truth in her shaking hands. Something was very wrong. They sat together at the kitchen table, the weak sunlight painting soft streaks across the chipped surface. Lily swung her small legs under the chair, glancing every few seconds at her mother. She didn't want to ask, but her voice slipped out anyway. "Mommy, are you getting worse?" Grace froze. Lily's chin trembled. "You don't have to lie." Grace swallowed hard. "Sweetheart, I'm trying my best." "But what if—" Lily stopped herself, hugging her arms tightly around her chest. She whispered the rest. "What if Santa doesn't bring a dad in time?" Grace's heart fractured. She reached across the table and squeezed her daughter's tiny hands. "Lily, listen to me. No letter is ever wasted. Sometimes someone reads who needs to." Lily sniffed. "But Santa?" "Maybe," Grace whispered gently. "Sometimes Santa sends people disguised as regular humans." On the other side of the city, the black sedan pulled into a worn-down neighborhood. Rusty mailboxes, cracked sidewalks, apartments squeezed tightly together. A place Michael had never stepped foot in. "This is it, sir," Paul said quietly. Michael stepped out into the biting cold, clutching Lily's letter tightly. He scanned the buildings until he found it, the one that matched her drawing. A small building, faded paint, cracked steps. His heart pounded. He walked to the entrance and pressed the button for the manager's office. A tired voice answered. "Yeah, this is Michael Hale," he said. "I need to inquire about one of your tenants. A woman named—" He paused. He didn't know her last name. But then he saw it on the mailbox list by the door. Grace Holloway, he said. There was silence on the intercom. Then, 5th floor, apartment 5B, elevators broken. Michael didn't hesitate. He climbed the stairs 2 at a time, breath fogging in the cold air. By the time he reached the top floor, his chest was tight, not from exertion, but from anticipation. He stood before apartment 5B, raised his hand, and knocked. Inside, Lily froze. "Mommy, someone's at the door." Grace's brow furrowed. She wasn't expecting anyone. She tried to stand but stumbled, gripping the wall. "I'll get it," Lily said softly. She shuffled to the door, stood on her toes, and peered through the peephole. A tall man with kind eyes stood outside, holding a folder. He didn't look dangerous. He didn't look angry. He looked lost. She opened the door a little. "Hello?" she said, her voice soft and nervous. Michael's breath caught. He recognized her instantly. The little girl from the crayon drawing. The trembling handwriting. Lily, for the first time in years, he felt his heartbeat change. He knelt down slowly, so he wasn't towering over her. "Hi," he said gently. "My name is Michael. I think I found something that belongs to you." He held out the letter. Lily gasped softly. You read my Santa letter?" Michael nodded, eyes warm. "Yes, and I'm really glad I did." Her small hands trembled as she took it back. Behind her, Grace weakly approached, her voice strained. "Lily, who is—" She paused when she saw the man at the door. Michael stood. Grace's tired eyes met his. Something unspoken passed between them. Fear, confusion, curiosity. And something else. Something neither of them could name yet. Michael stepped a little closer, his voice softening as he looked between Grace and Lily. "I'm sorry for coming unannounced. I found her letter. And I thought, well, I wasn't sure what I thought. I just knew I needed to bring it back." Grace swallowed, her hand gripping the wall to stay steady. Her eyes flicked to Lily, who held the letter tightly against her chest like something precious. Grace's voice came out thin but polite. "Thank you. That's very kind." Michael nodded gently. "If this is a bad time, I can leave. I didn't mean to intrude." But Lily shook her head quickly. "No. Wait." Grace glanced down at her daughter, surprised. Lily's voice lowered shyly. You really read it?" Michael knelt again, so he was eye level with her. Every word. Lily looked down, embarrassed. "I know Santa is busy, but I just wanted—" She stopped, her throat closing. Michael's eyes softened. "You wanted someone who wouldn't leave." Grace closed her eyes briefly, as if the words hurt her physically. Lily nodded. "Mommy gets tired a lot, and sometimes I get scared." Grace felt her heart twist painfully, a mixture of shame and fear rising inside her. She whispered sharply, "Lily." But Lily wasn't misbehaving. She was simply telling the truth. Michael's expression shifted, something like protectiveness flickering through him. "I'm really glad your letter reached me," he said quietly. "I think maybe it was meant to." Grace stiffened at that. She didn't know this man. She didn't know his intentions. And yet something about him, his calmness, his gentleness, the way he spoke to Lily as if she mattered, felt strangely safe. "Why are you here?" Grace asked softly. Michael hesitated for the first time. "Because I've spent a long time keeping to myself. And when I read her words, something inside me woke up." Lily blinked at him. "Woke up?" "Yeah." His eyes warmed. Something that was asleep for too long. Grace's guarded expression faltered slightly, but then her breath hitched sharply. She clutched her chest and stumbled. Michael instantly reached out. "Hey, are you okay?" Grace waved him off weakly, but her legs buckled. Michael caught her before she hit the ground, steadying her with careful hands. "Mommy!" Lily cried, rushing forward. Grace gasped, trying to regain control. "I'm fine. I just stood too fast." Michael shook his head gently. This wasn't just standing too fast. Grace looked away, ashamed. "I don't have insurance. I can't afford." "You almost collapsed," Michael said firmly, but with warmth. That's not something to ignore. Grace straightened slightly, her pride tightening her jaw. We'll manage. Michael lowered his voice. People don't manage alone forever. Grace's eyes shimmered with a mixture of fear and frustration. We don't need charity. This isn't charity, he murmured. It's concern. Lily tugged on Grace's sleeve anxiously. Mommy, please. Let him help. Grace looked at her daughter, then at Michael, then back at her daughter. Her resistance cracked. All right, she whispered. Just for a moment. I just need to sit. Michael helped her gently to the small couch. Lily clung to her hand, tears threatening to spill. Grace stroked her daughter's hair. I'm okay, sweetheart. Don't cry. Michael crouched in front of Grace, studying her breathing. You need to see a doctor. Grace shook her head quickly. We can't. I don't have the money. And I'm not dragging Lily through hospitals again. Michael's voice dropped to something deeply sincere. Let me take you. Grace stared at him. Why? You don't even know us. Michael hesitated, and for the first time, spoke the raw truth. You're right. I don't know you, but I know what loneliness feels like. And I know what it's like to wish someone would show up, even just once. Maybe I don't know everything about you, but I know enough to not walk away. Grace felt a tremor ripple through her. No one had spoken to her like that in years. Lily wiped her cheeks with her sleeve. Mommy, please. Grace looked at her daughter, the one thing she loved more than anything in the world. Her strength wavered as the pain in her chest pulsed again. She whispered, defeated, I'll go, but only if it's quick. Michael nodded. I'll drive you. Grace hesitated. Is your car far? No, Michael said. It's downstairs. I'll help you down the steps. Grace slowly stood. Lily slipped on her coat quickly. Michael stayed close, but didn't touch her unless she leaned. As they reached the hallway, Grace whispered to Lily, Stay beside me. Lily nodded, clutching her mother's hand. And as they walked down the dim stairwell of their old building, with peeling paint and flickering lights, Lily glanced up at Michael. You saw my letter, she whispered. Does that mean Santa heard me? Michael's breath caught. He looked down at her innocent, hopeful eyes, and something emotional rose in his chest. Something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. He knelt quietly and said, Maybe Santa sends help in ways we don't expect. Lily smiled softly. Grace watched them both, her heart twisting with something she didn't understand. Fear, gratitude, and a strange warmth all tangled together. They reached the front door. Michael opened it, the winter air rushing in. Outside, a world was waiting to change. Snowflakes drifted through the morning air as Michael opened the back door of the sleek black sedan. Lily helped her mother inside gently, worry tightening her small shoulders. Grace settled with a shaky breath, her hands trembling slightly as she braced against the seat. Michael closed the door softly, then walked around to the passenger side and got in beside her while Lily buckled herself next to her mom. Paul looked in the rearview mirror, eyebrows raised with concern. Everything all right, sir? Michael answered quietly. Hospital. Quickly but safely. Paul nodded and pulled into the snowy road. Inside the car, the heater hummed softly, warm air pushing against the winter chill. Lily watched her mother anxiously, her hands twisting together in her lap. Grace tried to force a smile for her daughter's sake. I'm okay, baby. Just tired. Lily nodded, though her eyes told the truth. She didn't believe it. Michael kept glancing sideways at Grace. Her breathing wasn't right. Too shallow, too strained. He wasn't a doctor, but grief had made him an expert at noticing when someone was in danger. He remembered what it was like watching someone he loved struggle to breathe, fight to stay conscious, pretend everything was fine. It broke something inside him to see that pain again in someone else. After several minutes, Grace spoke softly, her voice cracking. You didn't have to do this. We don't even know your last name. Hale, he said quietly. Michael Hale. Grace blinked in shock. She'd heard of him. Everyone had. His company logo was on half the new developments in the city. You're that Hale? Michael nodded. But right now, I'm just someone who can help. Grace looked down, overwhelmed. I don't want to be a burden. You're not, he said firmly, but gently. You're a mother who needs support. That's not a burden. It's human. Her eyes shimmered with tears she tried to hide. Lily reached across the seat and took Michael's hand without thinking. Thank you, she whispered. Michael's heart jolted. It had been years since the child's touch felt this real, this trusting. He closed his hand around hers lightly, careful not to startle her. You're welcome, he said, voice thick with emotion. The car slowed as they approached St. Joseph's Medical Center. Paul pulled up under the covered entrance. Michael hopped out first, opening the doors. He supported Grace as she stepped out, her legs wobbling beneath her. A nurse near the entrance noticed instantly. Sir, ma'am, do you need assistance? Yes, Michael said, his voice steady but urgent. She's having difficulty breathing. He gestured to Lily. And her daughter needs to stay with her. The nurse nodded, grabbing a wheelchair. Grace sank into it gratefully, though her embarrassment flickered across her face. Lily stayed close, clutching her hand. As they rolled inside, Grace looked at Michael, her voice faint. You should go. You've already done too much. Michael shook his head once. I'm not leaving. Why? She whispered, confused. He didn't know how to phrase it without exposing too much of his heart, but he managed softly. Because no one should face fear alone. Grace lowered her gaze, overwhelmed by the sincerity in his voice. Doctors quickly assessed her and guided her toward the examination rooms. A nurse turned to Michael and Lily. You two can wait in the family room. Lily hesitated, terrified to let her mother out of sight. Michael knelt and cupped her shoulders gently. She'll be okay. They're to help her breathe better, all right? Lily nodded, wiping her tears silently. Michael led her to the small waiting room filled with old magazines, worn couches, and a children's play corner. Snow fell softly outside the large window. Lily sat beside him, small hands in her lap. She whispered, I get scared when Mommy goes to doctors. I know, Michael said quietly. It's scary when someone you love is hurting. She leaned into him slightly. Do you get scared too? Michael hesitated, then nodded. Yes, I have been scared before. A lot. She looked up at him, her eyes shining with a mixture of innocence and wisdom far beyond her age. Did your mom get sick too? Michael's throat tightened. No, but someone I loved very much did. He didn't elaborate. The pain was still there, hidden but not gone. Lily rested her head gently against his arm. I'm sorry. Michael blinked, touched. Thank you. For a moment, silence fell over the small room. Then Lily whispered, Do you think Santa will still come? Michael looked down at the child, whose letter had shaken the walls around his heart. I think, he smiled softly, I think Santa already sent someone. Lily's eyes softened. You? Michael didn't answer directly. He simply placed a gentle hand over hers. Minutes later, a doctor walked into the waiting room. Family of Grace Holloway? Lily jumped up instantly. Is Mommy okay? The doctor gave a reassuring nod. She's stable for now, but she's very weak. We'll need to run tests. Lily exhaled in relief, but fear still lingered. The doctor turned to Michael. Are you a relative? Michael opened his mouth to answer, but Grace's words echoed in his mind. Sometimes Santa sends people disguised as regular humans. I'm a friend, he said softly, and for the first time it felt true. Lily sat close beside Michael in the waiting room, her small legs dangling off the cushion. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a pale glow across the empty chairs and old magazines. Outside, snow drifted past the window in soft spirals, the world moving slowly. Too slowly for a child waiting to hear if her mother would be okay. Michael watched her, seeing the way she kept pressing her little palms together, the way she glanced toward every passing nurse as if searching their face for answers. He had seen fear in many forms throughout his life. In boardrooms, in negotiations, in moments of grief. But nothing compared to the silent terror of a child clinging to hope. He leaned down slightly. Hey, he said softly. You're being very brave. Lily didn't respond at first. She just kept staring at the window, her breath fogging the glass. Mommy doesn't like hospitals, she whispered. She says they're too expensive. Michael swallowed. She brought you here before, didn't she? Lily nodded. When I had pneumonia. She cried a lot when they gave her the bill. His jaw tightened. Grace had been fighting battles that should never fall on one pair of shoulders, especially not shoulders already weighed down by illness. Before he could speak again, the door opened. A nurse stepped in, smiling gently. She's asking for you, she said to Lily. Me? Lily gasped. And you? The nurse added, glancing at Michael. He blinked, startled. Me? She said. The nurse continued, and I quote, Please bring the gentleman with the kind eyes. A strange warmth rushed through Michael's chest, catching him completely off guard. Lily grabbed his hand tightly. Come on, she whispered, tugging him toward the hallway. They followed the nurse down a corridor lined with curtained rooms until she stopped at a half-open door. Grace lay in the bed, pale but awake, her eyes lifting the moment they entered. Lily ran to her. Mommy. Grace managed a weak smile and opened her arms. Hey, sweetheart. Lily climbed carefully onto the side of the bed. Grace stroked her daughter's hair, breathing through the ache that pressed against her ribs. Then her eyes shifted to Michael. For a moment, neither spoke. Grace finally broke the silence with a fragile smile. Thank you for bringing me here. You don't have to thank me, Michael said softly. I'm just glad you're safe. Grace studied him, her breath slow and tired. The doctor, he thinks it's my heart. Lily's head jerked up. Your heart. Grace cupped her daughter's cheek gently. Just a little tired, that's all. But Michael could see the fear she was trying to hide. He moved closer to the bed, his voice steady. They're running tests, right? Grace nodded faintly. I haven't done any in years. I couldn't afford it. Michael's eyes softened. Then let me? Her eyes widened. What? Let me cover it, he said. All of it. Tests, treatment, whatever you need. Grace stared at him as if he'd spoken another language. No, I can't let you do that. You don't know us. Michael shook his head. I don't need to know every detail to care. Your daughter asked for someone who wouldn't leave. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Let me prove she wasn't wrong. Grace's eyes shimmered instantly. Lily looked between them, her voice trembling. Mommy, please say yes. Grace lowered her gaze to the thin hospital blanket, struggling with pride, fear, and desperation all at once. It felt wrong to accept help from a stranger, but it felt even more wrong to keep pretending she could handle everything alone. She whispered, barely audible, Why are you doing this? Michael swallowed the lump in his throat. Because once someone I loved needed help and I couldn't save her. I can't change the past. But maybe I can make a difference now. Grace closed her eyes, tears sliding down her cheeks. Lily clung to her tightly. Michael stepped closer, his voice low and sincere. Grace, let me help. Grace breathed shakily, her fingers tightening around Lily's hand. And then, finally, she nodded. Okay. Relief washed over Lily's face, so intensely that her small body trembled with it. Michael exhaled slowly, as if releasing years of something heavy he carried alone. Thank you, he whispered, and meant it deeply. A doctor entered then, carrying a small clipboard. We're ready to take her for imaging. Grace nodded, brushing her daughter's hair. I'll be back soon, baby. The doctor gestured gently. You can wait right outside. Lily kissed her mother's cheek before a nurse wheeled the bed away. She clutched Michael's sleeve, her eyes fixed on her mother disappearing behind the double doors. Is she going to be okay? She whispered. Michael knelt, so they were eye level. They're going to do everything they can. And so will I. Lily threw her arms around him in a sudden burst of fear and trust. Her tiny body shook as she cried into his shoulder. Michael froze, his breath caught, his arms uncertain for a moment. Then, slowly, he wrapped them around her. He hadn't held a child in years. He hadn't expected to hold one today. But as Lily cried softly into his coat, something inside him softened. Something he thought would never open again. Hey, he whispered, stroking her hair gently. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. Lily clung to him harder. Outside the imaging room, the hospital hummed with distant beeps and footsteps, but within Michael's arms, Lily felt safe for the first time in a long time. And Michael, heart trembling, felt something too. For the first time in years, he felt needed, and needed in a way that healed him. The hallway outside the imaging room was cold and quiet, the kind of place where every sound echoed just a little too loudly. Michael stayed kneeling, arms wrapped around Lily as she trembled against him. Her small fingers gripped his coat, like she was afraid he might disappear if she loosened her hold even for a second. He didn't move. He didn't rush her. He simply held her, steady, warm, present, until her breathing softened. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were red but determined. "I want Mommy to come back soon," she whispered, voice cracking. "She will," Michael said softly. "And when she does, she'll see how strong you were." Lily wiped her cheeks with her sleeve. "I'm not strong. I'm scared." Michael offered a gentle smile. "Being scared doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. And staying by your mom's side while you're scared, that makes you brave." She sniffled. "Do you think Santa listens fast?" Michael's heart tightened. "I think sometimes," he said carefully, "Santa sends help quicker than we expect." Lily leaned against his arm, comforted by the idea, even if she didn't fully understand it. Michael stood slowly, guiding her to a small bench against the wall. She settled beside him, clutching her mother's jacket like a blanket. Minutes passed, then more. Nurses walked by. Doctors murmured orders. Machines beeped faintly in the distance. Hospitals had a way of stretching time, turning minutes into hours. Lily suddenly spoke again. "Are you going to leave after Mommy gets better?" Michael looked down at her, startled by the question. Her eyes, still wet, carried years of insecurity. Abandoned childhoods had a way of teaching children to expect temporary love. He knelt to meet her gaze. "Lily, I came because your letter reached me. And once something reaches your heart, you don't walk away." Her lips parted. "So you'll stay?" "As long as you need me," he whispered. Her eyes softened with fragile hope. A nurse finally approached. "She'll be done in about 20 minutes. You can wait in the room across the hall." Michael nodded and guided Lily inside. The room was small but warm, with 2 chairs and a window overlooking the snowy parking lot. Lily pressed her forehead to the glass, watching flakes drift downward. "Mommy says snow means angels are close," she murmured. Michael's jaw tightened, his memories stirred. "Someone once told me that too." Lily turned to him. "Who?" "My fiancée," he said softly. "A long time ago." Lily blinked. "Did she go to heaven?" Michael inhaled deeply. "Yes, she did." A hush fell over the room. Lily looked at him with sympathy far beyond her age. "That's why you were lonely?" Michael didn't expect the question to hit as hard as it did. "Yes," he said quietly. "I was, for a long time." Lily reached out and took his hand, small, warm, reassuring. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He squeezed her hand gently, grateful. "Thank you." After a moment, she asked, "Does it hurt less now?" Michael thought carefully before answering. "It hurts differently. But today, helping you and your mom, it feels like my heart is waking up again." Lily's eyes softened, and she rested her cheek against his shoulder. "Then I'm glad my letter found you," she whispered. Michael closed his eyes briefly, overwhelmed by the purity of her words. Just then, a soft knock came from the doorway. The doctor stepped in. "Grace Holloway is back in her room and stable. We'd like to talk with both of you." Lily jumped up instantly, squeezing Michael's hand so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Is Mommy okay?" "She's awake," the doctor said gently. "But we need to discuss her condition." A cold wave of fear washed over Lily's face. Michael bent down, voice low. "We'll face it together." "Okay." Her voice trembled. "Okay." He took her hand again and walked beside her down the hallway. When they entered Grace's room, she was propped up in bed, pale but conscious. Lily ran to her immediately, hugging her tightly. Grace stroked her hair. "I'm okay, sweetheart. I'm right here." Michael stepped closer, offering a quiet nod. Grace met his eyes, tired, grateful, scared. "Thank you for staying." "I'm not going anywhere," he said softly. The doctor cleared his throat and addressed him gently. "Grace, your tests show significant cardiac strain. Without treatment, things could worsen quickly." Lily froze beside her mother. Grace closed her eyes, whispering, "I figured." Michael felt his breath tighten. The doctor continued, "You'll need ongoing care, medication, monitoring, possibly procedures. We'll discuss the full plan." Grace's fingers tightened around the blanket. I can't afford." Michael stepped forward firmly. "I will handle everything." Grace's eyes widened with panic and gratitude all at once. "No, I can't let you." "You can," Michael said, voice steady. "And you need to." Tears filled Grace's eyes. "But why? Why us?" Michael lowered his voice. "Because your daughter asked for someone who wouldn't walk away. And I'm choosing not to." Grace's breath trembled. Lily looked between them, hopeful, terrified, overwhelmed. Silence blanketed the room until the doctor excused himself, leaving them in a fragile bubble of truth. Grace wiped her cheek with trembling fingers. "Michael, you don't owe us anything." "No," he agreed softly. "But maybe I owe myself a chance to be the man I was supposed to be." Grace stared at him, trying to understand the depth behind those words. Michael stepped closer. "Let me help." Grace's gaze dropped, her voice cracking. "I don't know how to accept something this big." "You start," he whispered, "by letting yourself be cared for." Tears finally spilled down Grace's cheeks. And Lily wrapped her arms around both of them, small, brave, hopeful. In that moment, something sacred formed. Not a promise. Not yet, but something like the beginning of one.